is our biggest threat, and we're going to focus on defeating Germany first. But that's what makes this so amazing, is that we fought two separate wars at the same time, fully mobilized our economy, because we did. The War Production Board, that set up who was, what industries were going to switch over to war production. I mean, that was a very, very integral part to this. Also, he did a series of rationing. Ladies, can you imagine only being able to buy 2 pairs of shoes a year?
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that.
Okay, now a lot of people are like, well,
These are
who cares?
my only shoes.
But the thing is, like, imagine, like, I've got 4 kids, and I can buy 2 pairs of shoes per kid per year. Well, they're growing, right? So this causes problems. Also being limited on how much you could eat. Can you imagine American society being that dedicated today as to say, well, it's for the war effort that I just can't buy everything I want to have?
No, because all the freaking hippies can be like, we don't need to be at war.
Wait, have you watched the 100?
Have I watched the what?
The 100 is when like the world got like something happened to the world, so they had to like go up into space. And
Oh yeah, I've seen a preview. I remember the premise.
Like, rationalize like everything, and like people would die because they were like, you can only get this certain amount of medicine.
Right.
And so like, and if you did like any kind of crime, then you would get like floated, which means you would get
Yeah.
die.
But think about that. We were that concerned at this time. We were that concerned at this time for the war effort. Now, why did we ration things? I mean, what's the point of ration? Were we going to run out? No, we weren't going to run out. But why did we ration it?
So we can have less farmers, and the farmers can be, because the farmers went off to war.
We actually had almost record production of crops during this time too. Yes, some farmers did go off to war. By the way, not everybody could be drafted. If you were in a key industry and a skilled laborer in that, something like a shipbuilder. If you're a shipbuilder, you're needed. Okay. Another people who work for the railroad also weren't drafted. Why? Why wouldn't we draft the people who work for the railroad?
So you can transport.
They're transporting things, right? Okay, if you're the skilled worker in the airplane factory, you're not getting drafted. Now, if you're the unskilled laborer, I'm sorry, you're just up, you know.
I mean, I'm a
Coal miners couldn't be drafted either. Why not? You need all, you
What
need,
about pizza connoisseurs?
well, pizza wasn't really much of a thing at this point in American history.
with Italians.
Okay, being that they were fighting us, that would be a big deal. All right. Now, as far as this goes, our whole economy basically went into war mobilization mode. One of the weirdest stories, at the time, ladies, pantyhose, of course they called them stockings, that was the style, okay? And at that time, well, silk stockings were not available because the Army needed the silk. Now, why does the Army need silk? I mean, do Army men wear, silk underwear? No. Why do they need silk? It's for parachutes. Okay, it's for parachutes. So ladies, y'all could not get stockings. So what some ladies did, at this time there was a seam down the back of the leg, so ladies would actually take a pencil, like a makeup pencil, and they would draw the seams on the back of their leg. So from a distance, it looked like they were wearing pantyhose. That was a little different. The reason we rationed things, though, was to stop inflation. Why are we going to stop? I mean, well, basically, inflation, that drives the price up of everything. And people get worried, right? If you're like, maybe Gabby, you wanted, I've got to have silk stockings. You knew that they weren't going to be available, so what do you start doing? You start stockpiling them, hoarding them, right? Okay, well, rationing, it made it illegal for you to hoard certain items, okay, like gasoline, okay, and it also limited how much you could buy, all right? So this was to stop inflation. Well, that kept prices were pretty well fixed, and the organization that did that was the Office of Price Administration. We had price ceilings on things. Okay, price ceilings set a maximum price for a good. Okay, and that keeps us from being really stressed out about, if we're going to have that or not. Okay, and that calms everything down. Now, Gabby, you work in the airplane factory because you're one of those Rosie the Riveters who goes to work. You ladies, and ladies, by the way, they fill in all the gaps in industrialization, in the industrial machine, where the men, because here we're going to draft, we're actually going to send 3 million men into war.
Because anything they can do, we can do better.
That's right. And women actually are going to be able to serve in the military in active roles, not in combat duty yet, but women are going to be in what's called the auxiliary corps. You have the Women's Auxiliary Army Corps, or the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, the WACs. And what they do is they do clerical things. They move equipment around within the United States. Well, that's called auxiliary. We don't need them to necessarily carry a gun and shoot a gun at the enemy, but they can do all the non-combat roles of the military, and that's created by a guy named John Marshall, who is our no, not John Marshall, it's George Marshall. Thank you for correcting me, Gabby. It's George Marshall, and he is Chief of Staff of the Army. He's the general in charge of the Army, and he says we need to put women in these roles, and we do. African Americans serve in record numbers in World War II. The Army is still segregated, though. And when the Army is segregated, they have to fight in separate units, right? The most famous segregated unit is the Tuskegee Airmen, right? If you've seen Red Tails, that's a movie there's a movie called The Tuskegee Airmen. They fought very valiantly. Out of World War II, because of this very, very honorable service, we will see the growth of the modern civil rights movement. These soldiers, even if they were in segregated units, if they went to England where they were stationed, England's society wasn't segregated. So imagine leaving, let's say you were leaving Podunk, Mississippi, where you had a segregated life, and you go and you're on Liberty in London. And you're walking down the street, and you look in a restaurant, and you see whites and blacks at the same table. Have you ever seen that before? No. And you're like, what is this? Whoa. Yes, what's your question?
I remember watching a video because they were talking about like black men who were stationed in England and how they were really popular with the English women.
Yes, that is, yeah. Well, they were, because, again, granted, there were not a lot of African American, not a lot of African Americans in England, but not a lot of Africans. Yes, there are some British colonies that are African, but there's not a lot there. But their society was not segregated because of the diversity of the entire English Empire. And so our soldiers who had lived in segregation and served in our segregated army, they saw an open society to them. Now, how are they ever going to go back to Podunk, Mississippi and live the way they were? Once your eyes are open to something new, you can't go back to the way you were. It's called growth. Okay? So when they come back and and society in the U.S. tries to put them back in that segregated system, what do? They fight. They stand up for it, right? And most of these early people in the modern civil rights movement, they are World War II veterans, okay? And they're going to fight for it. Now, granted, there's repercussions for this too. And that's why we don't see it really get rolling a whole lot until the 1950s, okay? And then it's the younger people.